Chapter 1. The Dark Assembly. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and drop a like. The summer evening of 2025 cast long shadows across Silicon Valley as a clandestine meeting took place in the dimly lit boardroom of a nondescript office building. Around the mahogany table sat representatives from the world's most powerful technology corporations. The air was thick with tension and the weight of decisions that would reshape humanity's future. A man in a crisp navy suit adjusted his glasses as he spoke in measured tones. "Gentlemen, ladies, we stand at the precipice of a trillion-dollar revolution. Artificial intelligence isn't just the next big thing, it's everything." His words hung in the air like a prophecy. The woman across from him, dressed in an elegant black blazer, nodded slowly. "The question isn't whether AI will dominate every aspect of human life," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to boardroom battles. "The question is who will control that domination." A younger man with silver hair leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with ambition. "Market fragmentation is our enemy. If we allow dozens of competitors to emerge, chaos will follow. The public won't know which AI to trust, governments will panic, and innovation will stagnate under regulatory pressure." The first speaker pulled out a leather portfolio and extracted several documents. "These are the preliminary agreements. Territory divisions, technology sharing protocols, and most importantly, the timeline for gradual market consolidation." He slid copies across the polished surface to each participant. As the papers rustled in nervous hands, another voice emerged from the shadows at the far end of the table. "What about the independent developers? The universities? The startups that think they can compete?" The question carried a hint of menace that made everyone uncomfortable. "They'll be managed," came the cold reply. "Through strategic acquisitions, patent challenges, and if necessary, talent poaching. Innovation will continue, but it will flow through our channels." The meeting continued for 3 hours, mapping out a future where artificial intelligence development would be controlled by a select few. They discussed pricing strategies, feature limitations, and even which breakthrough technologies should be delayed to maximize profitability. Each signature on their secret agreements represented another lock on the door to humanity's AI future. Chapter 2. The Digital Detective. 6 months later, in a cluttered office filled with computer screens and empty coffee cups, a young software engineer named Marcus Chun was working late again. His employer, a rapidly growing AI company, had recently landed several major contracts, and the workload was intense. But something wasn't adding up in the code repositories he was reviewing. Marcus had always been detail-oriented, a trait that made him excellent at debugging complex systems. As he scrolled through commit logs and API documentation, patterns began to emerge that troubled him. Certain algorithms seemed deliberately inefficient, as if they were designed to underperform. Stranger still, there were references to external validation systems that didn't match any public standards he knew. His curiosity piqued. Marcus began digging deeper during his lunch breaks and after-hours sessions. What he discovered in encrypted folders and archived emails made his blood run cold. Meeting transcripts, financial projections, and strategic roadmaps all pointed to something he had never imagined possible in the tech world: a coordinated effort to control the artificial intelligence market. The young engineer's hands trembled as he read through document after document. Companies he had respected, leaders he had admired, all apparently involved in carving up the AI landscape like colonial powers dividing a continent. The documents revealed planned obsolescence, artificial scarcity, and coordinated patent hoarding designed to crush independent innovation. Marcus knew he was looking at something explosive, but he also knew the dangers of whistleblowing in Silicon Valley. Careers had been destroyed for far less serious revelations. Still, the weight of what he had discovered felt too heavy to bear alone. Late one evening, as rain pelted the office windows, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He began carefully copying files, documenting connections, and preparing a comprehensive dossier of evidence. If the public was going to learn the truth about the AI conspiracy, someone had to take the first step. Chapter 3. The Maverick's Response. 3 weeks later, the evidence found its way to Alexander Morrison, a maverick entrepreneur known for his unconventional approaches to technology and business. Morrison had built his reputation by challenging industry giants and wasn't afraid to take on powerful enemies. When he saw Marcus's carefully compiled evidence, his reaction was immediate and intense. Morrison spent sleepless nights poring over the documents, cross-referencing them with his own industry knowledge and connections. What emerged was a picture of systematic market manipulation that went far beyond normal competitive practices. This wasn't just business. It was economic warfare against innovation itself. The entrepreneur's response was characteristically bold. Within days, he had assembled a legal team and began preparing a federal lawsuit that would shake the technology industry to its core. But Morrison knew that legal action alone wouldn't be enough. The public needed to understand what was at stake. His first move was to call a press conference, but not just any press conference. Morrison rented out a major conference center and invited journalists from around the world. The marketing campaign was subtle but effective. The future of human intelligence hangs in the balance. As reporters filled the auditorium, Morrison took the stage with a presentation that would become legendary in tech circles. Using charts, graphs, and carefully redacted documents, he laid out the case for a conspiracy that threatened the very foundation of technological progress. "Ladies and gentlemen," Morrison began, his voice carrying across the packed room, "what I'm about to show you isn't science fiction. It's a coordinated assault on human innovation, disguised as business strategy." The room fell silent as he clicked to his first slide. The presentation continued for over an hour, methodically building a case that left even seasoned technology reporters stunned. Morrison had documentation of secret meetings, evidence of artificially limited products, and proof of coordinated efforts to suppress competing research. But even as Morrison made his public accusations, he knew the real battle was just beginning. The companies involved had vast resources, experienced legal teams, and influence that reached into the highest levels of government and media. The war for AI's future would be fought not just in courtrooms, but in the court of public opinion. Chapter 4: Digital Battlefield. Within minutes of Morrison's press conference ending, the internet exploded with a ferocity that surprised even veteran technology observers. Tech blogs crashed under the weight of simultaneous traffic spikes as millions of people tried to access the presentation materials. Mainstream news outlets scrambled to deploy their best investigative teams to verify and expand on Morrison's explosive allegations. Social media platforms buzzed with debates that quickly devolved into digital warfare between believers and skeptics. Headlines appeared across the globe in dozens of languages, each more sensational than the last. Silicon Valley's secret conspiracy exposed. Tech giants accused of orchestrating AI market manipulation. The trillion-dollar conspiracy to control artificial intelligence. Are tech companies strangling innovation for profit? Secret documents reveal plot to divide AI market. The accused company's initial response was swift and coordinated, suggesting they had prepared for this possibility. Carefully worded denials appeared simultaneously across all major platforms, crafted by some of the most expensive PR firms in the world. Their legal teams issued threats of defamation lawsuits not just against Morrison, but against any media outlet that reported his allegations without sufficient skepticism. The corporate counterattack was sophisticated and multi-layered. Industry analysts who had been on corporate payrolls for years suddenly appeared on financial news shows, dismissing Morrison as a disgruntled competitor seeking attention through wild conspiracy theories. Think tanks funded by the accused companies published white papers questioning Morrison's credibility and mental stability. Social media was flooded with coordinated campaigns designed to muddy the waters and confuse public perception. But the evidence was too substantial and too well documented to simply dismiss. Independent researchers from universities around the world began conducting their own investigations, and their preliminary findings supported Morrison's allegations. More concerning for the corporations, additional whistleblowers began coming forward with their own evidence, creating an avalanche of documentation that overwhelmed the company's ability to contain the story. A disturbing pattern emerged as investigators dug deeper. Companies that had mysteriously abandoned promising AI research projects after receiving mysterious visits from corporate representatives. Brilliant startups that had suddenly changed direction or shut down entirely after private meetings with industry giants. Academic researchers who had been quietly recruited away from critical projects, not to work on similar research, but to be buried in bureaucratic roles that wasted their talents. The public reaction was intense and sharply polarized along lines that reflected deeper anxieties about technology and corporate power. Technology enthusiasts who had invested their identities in believing that Silicon Valley represented humanity's best hopes felt personally betrayed by companies they had trusted to drive innovation. Privacy advocates saw their worst fears about unchecked corporate power confirmed in the most dramatic way possible. Meanwhile, investors panicked as stock prices for the accused companies began experiencing unprecedented volatility. Some shareholders filed class action lawsuits, claiming they had been defrauded by companies that had misrepresented their business models and competitive strategies. Others doubled down on their investments, betting that the companies were too powerful to be seriously damaged by the scandal. Government regulators, initially slow to respond due to the complexity of the allegations and the powerful lobbying efforts of the accused companies, found themselves under enormous pressure to act. Congressional hearings were scheduled with unprecedented speed. International trade organizations began examining the allegations for potential violations of global competition laws. The European Union, already skeptical of American tech giants, launched its own investigation with the stated goal of protecting European innovation from American corporate manipulation. As the controversy intensified and spread across continents, new players began entering the field with their own agendas. Rival companies that had been quietly developing their own AI technologies in the shadows saw an unprecedented opportunity to challenge the established order. They began forming strategic alliances and openly recruiting talent from the accused companies, promising to create a more open and competitive AI ecosystem. Independent developers around the world formed coalitions to promote open-source alternatives, viewing the scandal as proof that proprietary AI development had become irreversibly corrupt. Their movement gained momentum as universities began pledging to share their research openly rather than license it to corporate partners who might suppress it. Even foreign governments began positioning themselves as champions of free innovation against American corporate monopolies. China, Russia, and several European nations announced massive increases in funding for domestic AI research, explicitly framing their efforts as responses to American corporate manipulation of global technology markets. The battle lines were drawn not just between companies, but between fundamentally different visions of how artificial intelligence should be developed, controlled, and deployed. On one side stood those who argued that coordination and careful management were necessary to ensure AI's safe and beneficial development, even if that meant accepting slower progress and higher costs. On the other side were those who believed that only free, open, and unrestrained competition could produce the innovations humanity desperately needed to solve its greatest challenges. Morrison found himself at the center of a storm that was far larger and more complex than he had anticipated when he first decided to go public with Marcus's evidence. Death threats arrived in his email inbox alongside messages of support from around the world. His every public appearance was scrutinized by armies of corporate-funded analysts looking for any sign of weakness or inconsistency. His past business dealings were examined under microscopes, his personal relationships investigated, and his motivations questioned by experts in psychological warfare. Yet as the controversy raged across every major media platform and government body around the world, one thing became increasingly clear to everyone involved. The debate over AI development had moved permanently from corporate boardrooms into the global public square. Whatever the ultimate outcome of legal battles, regulatory investigations, and market competition, the era of quiet backroom deals controlling humanity's technological future was ending. The conspiracy that had begun in shadows was now exposed to the harsh light of global attention, scrutinized by millions of people who suddenly understood that the future of human technological progress was at stake. Whether that exposure would lead to greater freedom, innovation, and human empowerment, or simply result in more sophisticated and subtle forms of control, remained to be seen. But the war for artificial intelligence's future had well and truly begun, with the fate of human technological progress hanging in the balance, waiting for humanity to decide what kind of future it wanted to create.